right, shall we say. Yeah, I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse out there about Obama now, because he ran saying he was going to make the economy fair and he was going to protect Social Security and Medicare. And we're still bailing out Wall Street, $85 billion a month. $85 billion a month. That is like the size of the whole sequester. The Wall Street is, it's like kind of kept under wraps. It's not talked about, but we're now trillions of dollars into these Wall Street bailouts. Not to mention, $1 trillion a year on the war, military, industrial security complex. And we see in Boston how secure that actually makes us, which is not secure at all. You can't buy your security when you're, bombing a whole lot of people around the world and losing hearts and minds all over the place. So, trillions of dollars there, trillions of dollars on the Wall Street bailouts, trillions of dollars on tax breaks for the wealthy. The debt ceiling stuff that took place around the turn of the year. It was all smoke and mirrors. The supposed taxing the rich was really about a wealth protection tax package that in fact locked in low capital gains tax, locked in low income tax rates for, all the way up, but it promised to protect everybody up to $450,000 of income a year. No increase in tax whatsoever, and just a really marginal tax hit above that, and locking in on essentially eliminating the inheritance tax, the aristocracy tax, I call it, because we now have an aristocracy in this country. We have inherited wealth and inherited poverty. And if you had 100 people in the room and you had 100 loaves of bread in this country, how that gets distributed is 50 loaves are in the hands of one person. Out of 100 people in the room, one person has 50 loaves of bread. That's half the loaves. And then if you go to the other end of the income scale, if you had all those 100 people lined up, the richest guy is on one end, poorest guy is on the other. 50 poorest people, that's half the room, 50 of them are all sharing one loaf of bread. That's where we are right now. 1 out of every 2 people in this country, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, is in poverty or heading towards it and low income. 37 million students are basically indentured servants who are in debt, and there is really no way to repay that debt. Half of all college students are actually working jobs that do not require a college education and do not pay college wages. And what does the future look like? The Department of Labor says that 9 out of 10 jobs being created now are basically low-wage jobs that do not require a college degree. Half of them don't even require a high school degree. This is the kind of economy that's being engineered by the Wall Street, smartest guys in the room. They're very smart. They do know how to keep the money coming to Wall Street, which is making out like bandits, while everybody else is really struggling to stay afloat. 1 out of 3 African American young people are either in jail, on probation, or on parole. You can just keep going. We have a climate that is in meltdown with, the hottest decade on record, and 80%, this blew me away, factoid I came across recently, 80% of all that warming has happened just in the last 3 decades, telling you what? That this whole thing is accelerating massively. So, the chickens are coming home to roost now on fossil fuels, yet we continue, according to the IMF, which just put out a report 2 weeks ago, we are spending in the U.S., you and me as taxpayers, are subsidizing fossil fuels to the tune of $500 billion a year. in basically tax subsidies for fossil fuels. Yet it is literally killing us. Anybody plan to be here in 2050?
I'd like to be.
A few of us. Well, right now, you know, all this stuff that's happening with the mega drought, we now have established mega drought. That's what the scientists are calling it in the South and in the West, which is making the cost of food go up. You know, creating the forest fires and record heat waves and all that. All of this has been happening with less than 1 degree centigrade of temperature rise over the last 150 years. It's less than 1 degree, but by 2050, scientists are predicting it may be as much as 4 degrees centigrade by 2050. So, I mean, it's like unthinkable where we are going, and the date of that catastrophe keeps getting closer and closer. And in the last 2 years, you know, we've had these record extreme weather events. In 2011, we had 14 storms or droughts, which all broke $1 billion cost. 14 of them, and nearly as many the following year. So suddenly now people are getting religion in this country. Everybody except our politicians, you know, who are paid not to understand it and paid not to do anything about it. But, you know, people want a real solution to climate. People want jobs, not debt obsession, you know, not austerity to get rid of the national debt. And by the way, that study, that bogus study, the Rogoff study, which is used as the, you know, as the academic underpinning for why we have to quickly get rid of the debt, that was just proven to be wrong. And, you know, stupid mistakes that a graduate student was able to track down and humiliate them and disprove it. So the whole thing was based on smoke and mirrors to start with, and now it's even more wrong. And yet, you know, what are the guys in government, and I mean both of the corporate-sponsored political parties, they're still just talking about fixing the debt. That's all they know how to talk about, because that's what their corporate sponsors want to do. They want, you know, to, they just want excuses to keep doing more of the same, and to dismantle the New Deal and the Great Society programs to go after Medicare and Social Security. That's not what the American people want. The American people want jobs, even government-created jobs. Polls actually show people want to create jobs, and if the private sector can't do it, well then government needs to get down to the business of creating jobs right now. Welcome, come on in. Hi. And furthermore, you know, we got a whole generation of students now who are being locked into debt. There are a couple seats here. Take this stuff. Yeah, definitely move on in.
Move my laptop and backpack somewhere.
Okay. Scoot this over here. So a few more. Yeah, so we have a whole generation of students who are now locked into debt, don't have the jobs, carrying around these outrageous college debts, which are specially customized for students, in that you can't get out of them. If you're bankrupt, it still follows you around. It will follow you around basically to the grave. It's just outrageous that what used to be a free institution, really a birthright, part of our commons to provide public higher education. We knew from the GI Bill that every dollar we put into public higher ed gets repaid with $7 of benefits to the economy. So what are they talking about cutting back on public higher education? It more than pays for itself. It's not only the right thing to do, it's absolutely the economic thing to do. And throughout the 20th century, we paid for education up through high school because a high school degree was essential for getting a job, for being secure. In the 21st century, a college degree is essential. So by extension, it should also be paid for. I just came from Norway. I was in Norway last week, which was really awesome. Talk about a country that does right by its people. No poverty, no unemployment. And guess what? College is basically free for everybody. And you don't see a lot of angry and unhappy people walking around Norway. You don't see violence, you don't see crime. They've had, one horrific episode of public violence, but we have one, practically every day. And I happened to be there when the Boston Marathon bombing took place, and it was like people were just trying to get their heads around what's going on in America, that this kind of thing is happening. And Norway is sort of the example of how we stop this kind of violence by embracing, the principle of being a peaceful and responsible community that takes care of itself and each other. That's the answer to violence, right there. We need to stop global violence, and we need to stop being the war profiteers of the planet if we want to stop the violence, which will continue to haunt us at home. Not only from, terribly deranged, horrific bombers and purveyors of violence, but, from the everyday violence that we see in all over our country and our streets every day. It's just staggering, the amount of violence. So, at any rate, it's not rocket science how to fix these things. And we can make public higher education free, bail out the students instead of bailing out the bankers. That's $85 billion a month that we are spending bailing out the bankers. If we were putting that instead into student loan debt, guess what? In a year, student loan debt would be over. It would be erased. And then we could start making public higher ed free and really reviving our economy. That is the stimulus package, that we need. Let's make public higher education free and create, those kind of incubators and put students to work without releasing them into the world with this incredible burden of debt. While we're at it, we can make health care a human right, too, through a Medicare for All system. It's not only the right thing to do, it is also a humongous money saver, because 30% of every healthcare dollar right now is going into paper pushing and bureaucracy and red tape and big CEO salaries. So by moving to a Medicare for All system, we can basically save trillions of dollars every year, trillions of dollars, and pay down the debt. Which would you rather have, austerity to pay down the debt, or health care for everyone to pay down the debt? Who in their right mind wouldn't want that? And while we're at it, we can bring the troops home, cut the military in half, and bring back $500 billion every year into our economy. There is no shortage of money. There is no shortage of resource. There's no shortage of vision and great ideas. What we have is a shortage of a democracy. Our democracy has been completely hijacked. There's been a coup in slow motion over the course of the last several decades. And we don't have a democracy. We sort of have a semblance of a democracy, but it doesn't really work that way. And there are all kinds of ways that prevent it. I got to this myself as a medical doctor. I'm trained as a medical doctor, and I worked in the clinic for a long time, and I began to feel like I was just giving people pills and medical procedures and pushing them back out to the things that were making them sick. Everything from air pollution to an incredibly sick food system, with these skyrocketing rates of obesity and diabetes and heart disease and cancers and learning disabilities and asthma and all that. I began to feel like, what exactly am I doing in the clinic, pushing these pills on people which have side effects and which are expensive and which are breaking everybody's bank account, and they're not making us well. So I got more and more involved in sort of the upstream work, trying to close down coal plants and incinerators and instead create recycling programs and healthy local food and gardening programs. and the things that make us healthy, and by the way, which create lots of jobs, far more jobs than are being created in nuclear and fossil fuel and fracking and all that, which are also killing us, by the way, at the same time. You know, there's an incredible win-win solution here. So, you know, I began to realize that, you know, these things are fixable, but over the 15 years or so that I worked as an advocate on these issues, we were only going in the wrong direction. I began to realize that it is a game of divide and conquer. It's set up as work on your one issue, you know, choose your issue and work on that and forget about all the others. So it plays off the need for jobs, the need for decent wages, the need for, you know, a healthy community and a good, healthy food supply, for health care. It plays us all off against each other, as if we had to choose between you know, a climate that can support life and having a water supply and having a food supply or having a job. You're supposed to choose between those, you know. It's like going to your doctor and saying, I'm going to choose my one organ system, you know, that I want to be healthy. How about you take care of my heart and forget everything else? You know, we don't live that way as a society. So, you know, I began to realize it was a game of divide and conquer, and around that time I actually got arm twisted into running for office for the first time. I had not been a member of any political party because they all seemed so incredibly corrupt and just dishonest. I didn't want to go near anything like politics. And as I realized that, oh, there is this other kind of politics, people politics, as opposed to corporate and big money and Wall Street politics. There's a politics that is of, by, and for everyday people, that doesn't take money from the predators and Wall Street, etc. That it really was about the agenda that I was working on as an advocate. And so I said, well, sure, why not try that? Everything else has failed, you know, working on all these issues that seem like, well, everybody supports them. Why can't we move forward? In Massachusetts, my home state, we even passed campaign finance reform. We passed so-called clean elections so that we had publicly funded candidates. And what do you think happened after we passed it by a public referendum, by a huge majority? The legislature, which rather preferred not to have contested elections, they decided that they would just repeal that, and they repealed that law on a voice vote. That law, and this was a Democratic legislature, 85% Democratic. They repealed it. For me, that was like absolutely the last straw, and why I began to see that it really is about having an independent party that is not a part of this very corrupt system that is literally killing us, choking us, starving us, depriving us of jobs, shipping our jobs overseas. And I should make a quick comment too about the Republican-Democrat thing, if I may, because there is this politics of fear out there that keeps telling you, oh, you don't dare stand up for what you really want and what you really need, because then you might get the worst of the two. You got to just settle and vote for the lesser of the two. Well, you know, we've been hearing that for quite a while now, this politics of fear, and it's got a track record. So let's look at where we've gone over the last, 12 years, including under Obama, where we had a Democratic president, and for 2 years we had a Democratic Congress as well. Where did we go with that? Basically this politics of fear, which told us to be quiet, be good little boys and girls, that politics of fear delivered everything we were afraid of. All those reasons we were told to be quiet, so we wouldn't get an expanding war, so we wouldn't see more of these free trade agreements, which ship jobs overseas and undermine wages at home. So we wouldn't see more Wall Street bailouts. So we wouldn't see this more drill baby drill energy policies. We've gotten them, by the droves. We wouldn't see more of the prison industrial complex and the school to prison pipeline. We've gotten it just enormously because we allowed ourselves to be silenced. Contrast what's happened over the last 4 years with what happened under the Nixon administration. Under Nixon, Republican, outrageous Republican president, but we had a really vocal, empowered populace. And people got out and they said, no, we're going to bring the troops home. We're not going to go to Vietnam, we're going to bring the troops home. And they did that. We ended the war under Nixon. We established the EPA under Nixon. We established the Clean Air Act. We developed women's right to choose and basically pressured the Supreme Court into Roe v. Wade under Nixon as well, because we had a politics of courage, not a politics of fear. And if you look back over the history of real social transformation, it's always happened because there's been a social movement on the ground together with independent political parties, which are not part of the two establishment corporate parties. Under abolition, we had an abolition movement, and we also had the Liberty Party, which moved that agenda into the Republican Party, which at that time was an independent third party that happened to come up in that presidential election and actually got elected and brought that agenda into the White House. Same thing for women's suffrage. There was a movement in the street. Women fought. Women went to jail. Women went on hunger strikes in order to get the right to vote. And they had a women's party which pushed that agenda into public discourse and moved it forward. And same thing for the labor movement. There was blood in the streets for a 40-hour work week, for child labor laws, for safe workplaces. And we've seen in Texas, what happens when you don't have unions and workers are then unable to go and talk about the dangers that they know about in the workplace. We've just seen this, incredibly in Bangladesh as well. We need to speak out, we, not our taskmasters and the fat cats. They don't deliver. We need to be there with the demand, with the vision, with the agenda. We need third parties. We need independent parties. You don't have to win the election in order to win the day. And you won't win the election, and you won't win the day if you're not fighting for it. So it is about standing up. It's about standing up and articulating, advancing that agenda, the vision, and the demands. In the spirit of Frederick Douglass, you're probably familiar with the quote that said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We need to be there bringing the demand. That's what the Green Party is all about. It is about making that demand explicit. And the really good news is that most people agree with us. Most people support our agenda. We're calling for a Green New Deal. We're calling for healthy communities. We're calling for jobs at the level of our communities. We're calling for free public higher education. We're calling for downsizing the military, which has been done. At the conclusion of every war, going back to World War II, after the war was over, the military was cut back. After Vietnam, it was cut back, I think, some 43%. The military budget was slashed. After the Cold War, after the Korean War, enormous cuts in the military. You don't see that happening this time. They're, continuing to build. That tells you we have entered into a state of empire, of permanent war. This is just not sustainable. It's absolutely wrong. We should be cutting the military. That's what most of the American public wants to do now. We are no longer in a state of war. We need to bring the troops home. We need to redefine the Defense Department so that it is truly a Department of Defense. So, bottom line is the public agrees with us. We have the numbers. We've got the solutions. Now we just need to get the word out and organize. People who have come to the Greens have really rejected the politics of fear, have really understood that that is a propaganda campaign that's intended to keep us silenced and powerless. It's really about standing up now while we still can, because nothing has been reformed on Wall Street. The Dodd-Frank bill is essentially toothless. It's full of loopholes. We are headed for the next Wall Street crash. The economy continues to tailspin. We are not in a recovery unless you happen to be on Wall Street or in the top 5% maybe, but everybody else is going downhill right now. And there are no exit strategies on the horizon. And same goes for climate. You know, the clock is ticking. It's time for us to stand up, and races like Joe's are extremely exciting because this is potentially a winnable race. So, you know, I'm here because I was so excited when I heard that he was running for city council, because I did hear him speak a year ago or so, a little more than that, and you know, this is an incredible person around whom lots of people will rally if they know that he's running and if we get the word out. So I want to really encourage you to hitch your wagon to this campaign, because Joe's not only talking about the solutions that we need right here and right now, but he's really talking about reviving a power base that really restores power where it should be. And whether we win this election or we simply win the day by developing a strong local Green Party and running new candidates, a campaign is a great opportunity to learn how to run yourself. You know, by being a campaign manager, there is no better way to learn how to actually be a candidate and run a campaign. You want to live around it for a while before you actually do it. But we need a lot of people in this room to be running for office in the near future, because we have a peaceful revolution that is happening. The rebellion is in full swing, from the democracy revolutions in the Middle East to the Occupy Wall Street protests to the walkouts of the teachers and the boycotts from the students and the eviction blockades and the fracking protests and the nuclear power plant protests. There is a wave of democracy and justice that really is sweeping the planet, that's sweeping the country. It is coming to this neighborhood if it hasn't been here yet. People need something to rally around. There's incredible potential for change right now, and it's all about harnessing it. I'm going to end with one last quote, and that's from Alice Walker, who said, famously, that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. Consider this. There are 37 million students in this country who are in debt. That alone is enough to win any election out there. That is a profound voting bloc. And if we are talking to that voting bloc to say, hey, this race and the Green Party are how we get that voting bloc back into power, because no one has more potential, no one has more moral authority than young people whose future is being snatched out of your hands right now in a way that's just completely unacceptable and completely unconscionable. And there's every reason for us to be standing up and rallying around young people who have always led the charge for real social change and social transformation. So we need you to lead the charge right now. And this campaign is a wonderful training ground, I think, for young people to come back in to the leadership role that really belongs to you. So this is a great time. People are at the breaking point right now, and we can turn that into the tipping point and start to take back our democracy and a peaceful, just, green future that is within our reach if we make it so. So thank you for being here, and thank you for stepping up to the plate for Joe's campaign. And if I can just add, I don't know if you have done a pitch yet, a money pitch.
I have done a small money pitch.
So I'll just reiterate that. You know, whatever you can contribute, and I know there are probably some people in this room who are deeply in debt, so you have other things to contribute. Those who aren't in debt, you know, and who still have a job, you know, consider this the best investment of your life. You know, this is about salvaging our economy before it crashes again and creating a vibrant local economy, which we can do. You may or may not know about the story of Gainesville, Florida. Do you know about what's going on in Gainesville with their renewable energy sector? They have this really vibrant renewable energy sector in Gainesville, which was actually fairly protected. So I understand from some of the recent downturn, because they adopted, through the city council, they adopted this feed-in tariff program, which is, it's a fancy name. It's basically a way that the community helps to fund renewable energy and renewable energy jobs. So it funds solar in particular, or small-scale wind, and creates a renewable energy economy locally, and creates lots of jobs in the process and transforms your energy profile. This is how Germany got to be so green and so strong and so secure. Germany has this incredible economy now. It's not only that, but that's a big part of it. They have this thriving green energy economy because they created this program that essentially mobilizes public money to help jumpstart lots of little small businesses in essentially solarization. But you could also do that with, you can use the same kind of financing to do insulation and to do weatherization jobs. So there's just a whole slew of jobs that could be created right now for the people who need them most, you know, and lots of incredible creative jobs for our college students who have degrees, as well as programs for people who don't have degrees, who haven't even graduated from high school, can be put to work in these kinds of programs. So,
Yeah, I just want to say, Jill, that Bowling Green is a particularly good community to do this in because we have a municipally owned utility.
oh, that's great.
And actually, we're very proud of this, we get about 25% of our power here from 4 utility-scale wind turbines
Oh, that's
that
amazing.
are put up just outside of town.
Wow.
But the solar piece has been missing, and that actually is something I do want to focus on when I get into council.
That's really great. So these are all reasons why you want to make your investment tonight in this campaign. And it's not just tonight. You know, I think this is ongoing. I think this is, you know, this is an incredible opportunity. And we're at a moment in time now where we can't assume that we're going to have lots of infinite opportunities going forward. We really have to seize them and use them. And use them to build our capacity and to build the Green Party and to train lots of new candidates for the work that we need to do going ahead. So I really encourage you to volunteer, consider being, do you have a campaign manager yet?
I do have a
You
campaign
do, well that's
manager, yes.
wonderful. Consider being an assistant campaign manager. Consider being a volunteer manager. Consider being a campus organizer. And consider also starting a Campus Greens organization, because we are starting them now all over the country. Do you have?
We just had a
We talked about it
All
tonight.
right, okay,
be the
wonderful.
faculty advisor.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you.
Sure.
And for the students, you know, this is such an exciting thing because it puts you in touch with students who are doing this all over the country, and you're going to feel like, oh my God, you know, this is like the network to die for. And you share stuff. The student caucus now for the Green Party, the National Green Party, is one of the most active caucuses right now because the floodgates are opening. You know, in coming from Norway, it's the same thing there. The Green Party used to be all people with gray hair, and like our meetings were all gray-haired people. Now it's like we're terribly in the minority. You know, it's like 1 or 2 of us in a room, and it's just so exciting to see. Same thing in Norway, and in fact, let me just tell you what the difference a generation makes. What the Greens are doing in Norway now is diving into the ocean once a week, okay? Like even during the winter, they are diving into the ocean to, just into the beaches right off of Oslo, to make the point that they are going to stop the tar sands investment of their national oil company. So they have this big campaign going on to basically, they have a national energy company, and they want to make it a national renewable energy company, not a national oil company. So they have this incredibly invigorated campaign which has the spine to go jumping into the ocean once a week. Just like not wetsuits or anything, you know, like this 40, 35 degree weather, they're going into the ocean. It's really amazing. So at any rate, young people all over the world are coming into the Green Party right now, and it is so exciting. And we are discovering, you know, I thought like maybe Greens would be different, you know, in Norway or in Sweden or Germany. And there were Greens from all those places at this event. But it's like exactly the same. It's like there's this sort of just global consciousness that has opened up. And it's kind of channeling right now through the Green Party. And it's very exciting to see this sense of a politics and a vision and an agenda which is really shared around the world. And for us to be able to collaborate with our counterparts around the world can make us, you know, incredibly potentially powerful in moving this agenda forward. So it's just really exciting, and I can't encourage you enough to seize the moment with this campaign and really make this a breakthrough campaign. And let's get Joe elected to City Council here in Bowling Green. Woo!
Well, all right, to follow that up immediately, right here, Brooke has graciously